All right, so Kiva Knight, thanks again for joining. Uh, let's kind of start. Maybe get a quick intro for you for my audience doesn't know. I know you are Kiva the Gaffer on Instagram. Your IMDb credits range from head chief lighting technician to Gaffer. Could you kind of, for our audience, maybe just quickly say kind of what your role is on some of these films?
Yeah, absolutely. Chief lighting technician, Gaffer, kind of same thing, really. Pick the title. One's more kind of utilized by the unions. Chief lighting technician is the 728, local 728, which is a union I'm part of. That's the real kind of official title, but Gaffer has been used since the dawn of time. And, on these films, I answer to the cinematographer and collaborate with that person and come up with the lighting plan and execution of the lighting plan. So I manage the lighting department. This is a very kind of broad.
Yeah, for sure. Just a little stuff.
But yeah, and I mean, the reality is I collaborate with the cinematographer and manage the lighting department. And that's my role. And I answer to the cinematographer daily.
Excellent. You've worked on some fucking beautiful films, man. I know James Laxton and what he did on Moonlight and Beale Street Could Talk. Those movies, every time like the name is brought up, I have such a vivid image of what those films look like. So I mean, just congrats on that. Like obviously those films, a lot of critical acclaim. Those movies also have wonderful scores. Not really what we're talking about, but every time I think of those movies, so vivid. I want to talk to you a little bit just about kind of the direction of cinema. Right now, our business here, we're pop-up cinema. We've transitioned to virtual cinema through COVID. And I know a lot of things were trending originally towards just kind of like a combo of streaming and theatrical viewing. A lot of filmmakers are trending towards episodic storytelling. What do you think, in general, like, where do you see cinema going? Do you see a lot more filmmakers transitioning towards that episodic filmmaking? And if so, what do you think the reason for that is? I know, for instance, Barry Jenkins is following up with Beale Street Could Talk with a project you were working on, the Underground Railroad. And I wonder kind of what the thought process is going, because especially if Beale Street Could Talk and Moonlight, critical successes, box office successes, what's leading that trend?
Well, I mean, I think the streaming platforms are, of course, leading that trend right now. And I think there's also just a lot of interesting content on these platforms now. And maybe, I don't know, way back when, I'm also I'm new to the whole process too. Like this is my first big streaming show that I've worked on as well.
Yeah.
So, I've worked on Netflix stuff and Netflix movies and whatnot in the past, but this is my first long episodic thing. The previous thing I did was The Girlfriend Experience, which was like a 6-episode miniseries.
Yeah.
But this show was, well, he directed the first one, and Amy Simons, I believe, actually, no, he didn't direct. Well, Soderbergh did the movie, and then the TV show was a spinoff, where he was, I think, the producer on it.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know. These streaming platforms are just pushing that stuff right now. And I think the content is it's good. There's a lot of good content out there. But I think where it starts to get gray is, and I think people are going to start to miss it in terms of at least people working on the films, is just getting to see that content on the screen, getting to see the content on the big screen in the movie theater, and whatnot. And I think that's the big major difference,
How do you feel about that on a personal level? Do you miss that experience, or do you think there is I'm of the mindset, cinema's been, going to the theater has been the same experience for, 80 years, more or less. And you have your Alamo draft houses and places that try to create a whole experience around the movie. I mean, do you think it's a positive that there's more content? Is it worth losing that big screen experience to get more content? Or is that something you really miss out on? Do you think it's something we need?
I think it's tricky because I think for the labor force and the film economy, pre-COVID, it's been incredibly beneficial, and it's put a lot of people to work. And as of late, there's never been this much work. I feel like there's never been this much work, certainly in my, term of, which is pretty short. Like I've been in the business for 15 years. So, from when I got in, which was, real kind of soon, got into lighting, which was soon after the 2008 economic crash. The business was just dead. It was like the worst time to get into the business, and seeing where it is now and the abundance of work and who that's benefited and how it's benefited us all. That part is really, really positive for sure. But, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I think where it would be awesome is to see a lot of this content somehow, even if it's like, a specialty screening. Like what kind of comes to mind is the Castro Theater in San Francisco. And you mentioned the Alamo Draft Houses, these kind of boutique movie houses, whether we get to see the Underground Railroad at one of those boutique houses or some of these other episodics, maybe, they play them at these boutique houses. I don't know the politics behind that, but I think it's really disappointing to see stuff go straight to television. I mean, one exception was, however, Scorsese was able to negotiate The Irishman, and we were able to see that. We were able to see that in the theater. So I certainly want to be able to see what I work on in the theater. It's obviously not the same sitting in my living room and watching it on my TV.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, I love the convenience of, The Five Bloods is coming out tomorrow. I love that this weekend, whenever I have, 2 to 3 hours, I can just sit and watch it, but I'm also really going to miss being able to go in and just fucking experience it,
Yeah, for sure.
So what was the biggest difference as far as working on the Underground Railroad versus the films, working on that episodic? Was it kind of the same type experience working on a film, or is like when you have that camaraderie, you're there longer? I know you guys were in Savannah for a little bit. Is it a noticeable difference, like actually being on the day-to-day?
I mean, I think the biggest difference is it's just a marathon and not a sprint. It's an incredibly long time, and there's ebbs and flows. There's you have people who get sick, there's people who lose their family members. There's so much that happens in a year that you bear witness to, just on a personal level, with your friends and colleagues on the show. And it's just a marathon, man. And it's a long time to be away from home. It was great to visit Savannah and Atlanta. I'm out of Los Angeles, so it's certainly taxing to spend that kind of time away.
Yeah.
But I think it's amazing to be part of a project like this and get to, experience that story and go through it all. And I don't know. I can't talk too much about the project, to be honest, just because it's not out yet.
Yeah, of course.
So I can't really go into detail about it, but I think the real big thing is it's a marathon and not a sprint. And I don't know. I really enjoyed working for this much time, though, on this project. But I think it's because that so many of the people that I answer to at the top, James and Barry and the producers that were part of this, Adela Romansky, who I've done many projects with, they're such good people to work with in general. So it really makes there's such a kind of collaborative thing that happens working with this team. It's a real special kind of place to be and work at. So, would I want to work with any team for 10 months and out of town? No. But yeah. I mean, the work that this group is doing is exceptional every time. And they're always important projects to be a part of. So for me, I've already gotten to be part of the three projects with these guys, and all of them are very, very important projects for society, especially right now. It's a commentary, and they're important pieces to be part of, and they're works of art. I mean, they're like they're, like you said, I mean, they're amazing to watch. The imagery that these guys crank out and that I get to be part of in Light is incredible. So that part of it's amazing, you know, to spend that much time working at our craft. And also I think it gets to what I notice is, you know, a movie, sometimes it feels like when you're working on a movie, right when you get into that sweet spot and hit your groove, you hope it happens early, but sometimes it happens late. And when you all of a sudden it's over, right? Like,
Right.
you know, if you have an 8-week shooting schedule or whatever it is, it's, you know, it could be over real quick. And with this, it's like, it felt like we were really able to sharpen the knife and get the craft to a special place and to work in silence often, and all of a sudden the camera's rolling. And for me, it's really special because I think there's few collaborative mediums like working in film. And, you know, if I can go and light a set and talk very little to the cinematographer, but, you know that we've had these discussions in setting up what the plan is for a particular location. And then I can turn around and, you know, the camera's already rolling and I haven't looked at the monitor and we're all good to go and things look beautiful and
that's awesome.
The shot takes off. I mean, it's just like, I think you get to spending that much time on set, you get to a place that can be really interesting where you don't have that luxury or time necessarily to hone the craft. I mean, also realize that a lot of these projects that we do, they're the previous projects, you know, Moonlight, just over a couple $1 million, I think. And then Beale Street, somewhere in the neighborhood, I forget, maybe 13 to 15, but this is a big show.
I think it was like 12 million for Beale Street. I looked it up before we chatted just to see.
Okay. Yeah. But we also, it was very cool to see there's always compromises. We had compromises on this show and what we had available for resources, but by far this was absolutely the most, you know, resource rich show that we had all done together. And to see this team, to see Barry have these resources and have these tools at his beck and call and whatnot to do this and to tell the story was really special to see, you know, because there's so many voices that don't get that opportunity and deserve it. And Barry certainly deserves it. James deserves it. And to see them have the tools at hand to tell the story was special.
I'm so excited for that project. I'm personally like, if I have the choice between watching something episodic or a film, I like to get like the full experience in 2.5 hours. But you do have these exceptions, like Ava DuVernay's When They See Us, like one of my favorite projects of the last year. I'm super stoked for this one. You mentioned obviously COVID has slowed everything down, and another thing you said that kind of like triggers a thought with me is, you know, you don't think about people being on a film set taking, you know, a lot of people don't think about, you know, sick days or something happening and somebody having to take a day off. There's obviously the fact that COVID has paused a lot of projects. Are there any impacts that people necessarily may not be thinking of, or things that you are concerned about or just paying attention to, that like maybe some projects are going to be delayed even longer than when we can get back out and live a normal life? Or there are certain projects that are going to be scrapped completely? Are there a lot of jobs within that industry that are going to diminish? Like, what are your thoughts of how COVID's going to affect kind of content going forward?
Yeah. It's going to be a nightmare. I mean, yeah, I think that anyone watching this who's not in the business, but maybe a film enthusiast, but doesn't know exactly how things function behind the scenes, the reality is it's going to be a completely different landscape for all of us. And just in terms of like the health implications of it, there's prime example on our show that happened where our department from like December 15th to March just kept passing on cold, flu, all this stuff. because we work in such close quarters to each other.
Right.
And we also, just as a the film community is notorious for one, there's not sick pay. Two, there's we just don't take days off. We don't if we get sick, it's not like, unless we're vomiting and on the toilet, we're going to work.
And connect that being behind a bar, it's
yeah.
Same. There's no sick pay, not a lot of benefits. Yeah, I know that feeling. So
yeah.
You're coughing. It's like, we got to get through it. Like, we'll just go check it out. You don't even think about that stuff.
Yeah. So there's, and it's also, aside from the sick pay thing, it's more to do with just the culture. We muscle through things. We get through it. We get it done. Yeah. And me, I actually took 5 days off on the show to get better. And that's the first time in 15 years that I've taken, maybe I called in sick. I needed to call in sick once before, but yeah. It's just not something you do. And then there's so many other ways it's going to affect us. For instance, we work in this very fast-paced environment. The camera always needed to roll yesterday, right? And every department's in the room: grip, lighting, art, hair, makeup. It's just like costumes. It's endless. And we had a lot of small sets on this show, and it's amazing to see a room fill up with people. It happens instantly. We're all shoulder to shoulder working, and that's out the window now. It's going to be, often working in that environment, it's frustrating. And if you have to do something very, very impactful to the space, you have to have people clear out. That happens. But there's also this frenetic shoulder to shoulder hustle bustle vibe that happens on a film set that is part of the experience of working on a film set. It's part of what makes it really interesting. And right now it's going to be a very regimented thing. All right, set lighting has the set. Okay, set lighting clears out. Grip has the set. Grip clears out. Art has the set. There's no way for us to not have this impact the day and how long it takes to get stuff done.
Which that will impact the budget too, right? So then you have to, if not everybody can work at the same time, it's going to take more time, obviously more time, more money. Like, do you think that's going to trickle down and affect what we end up getting on screen?
For sure. For sure. It also comes down to, there's all this sort of talk and the photography of it all, are there going to be, maybe social distancing between, the actors and the camera person and this and that, and the personal protective equipment that needs to be worn. And it's just challenging. You hear about crowds being out the window and that maybe turning into a CG thing. We'll see how it turns out. I think that what I will say is the way that the show was photographed and lit, which was very much to give the camera as much freedom as possible, which is often the case with a lot of these shows these guys do. We could be seeing either 270 to 360 degrees all the time. And I will say, I feel like emotionally prepared to take on that task. I think that, I see it possible with the show we did, minus some of the confined spaces we were working in. And of course, the technique needs to change with just how the labor moves in and out of spaces.
Nice. Where on Underground Railroad, were you guys still filming when this started to happen? Like, it's not complete yet as far as photography now, or was it already done?
We were 3 days shy of being done when we got shut down. Yeah.
Wow.
So, it was the whole weekend where it was like kind of the end of the film industry was Friday the 13th.
Yeah, really?
So yeah. It was March Friday the 13th. And yeah, no, so I think that there's a handful of stuff that they either work around and they live without, or eventually we'll have some pickups to do, and we'll get it done. So yeah, 3 days.
Wow, that's terrible luck, man. I can't wait to see it again. And I heard you mentioned working with that crew. Where I worked at the time in Savannah, had a lot of the crew members coming in, a lot of cast members coming in, and everybody just raves about working with Barry and that crew. And that translates to the film. That I had a chance to speak with him a couple of times here in Savannah. Just couldn't be nicer, couldn't be more kind, and that translates. So I'm very excited, especially with the social climate now, which we'll kind of touch on here in a couple of minutes. It couldn't come quicker enough. Could not come quicker enough. I have a question about one of the films you worked on, kind of going back to that theatrical experience, All Day and a Night, which was released on Netflix about last month, I believe. So
Yeah.
a film like that, which I haven't gotten a chance to watch yet. It's on the list. I'm trying to knock it out in the next couple of weeks. That movie obviously did not get a theatrical release. I don't know if it probably would not have without COVID either, because it was a Netflix film. How do you, I think content it can get buried very quickly, with the algorithms. And that's a movie that had I not been actively kind of researching what new films are coming out, what's happening around, I would have missed. Do you think that is do you notice that yourself? And do you think that that's kind of something as more and more films are direct to streaming, or, when theaters do open, if it's a simultaneous release or a short theatrical run, how do films like that not get buried? Where is that going to take just very good film journalism, people spreading the word? It's just a concern of mine, because again, I talked to a lot of people who weren't aware of that film. One of my favorite films of last year was Waves. I don't know if you got to see Waves.
I haven't, or put it down.
Waves, Trey Edward Schultz. It was if not my favorite film of last year, top 2 or 3. But I chat with a lot of people who aren't aware that it was even released. So, what do you, just as far as that topic goes, what are your thoughts on how we find our content?
Man, I think it's a great question. And I agree with you, because, I sought out finding that movie to watch because I worked on it, obviously. But, I noticed right away that, well, first of all, it obviously didn't have, it depends, right? Man, no, because we're talking strictly streaming right now. You're right. You're 100% right. I mean, I noticed over the days following after watching it, when it wasn't something that I was seeking out and knew about, that it didn't just jump out on me. It didn't just jump out at you out of the Netflix platform and say, hey, I'm here. What is there? I don't know all the Netflix tabs, but there's probably newly added or something like that.
Right. Even so, I find myself searching for films sometimes, and I'll type in, if I'm typing in All Day and a Night, I'll type in the word all, and Tiger King pops up first. That doesn't have the word all in it anywhere. It's kind of scary, man, because there's so much good content out there.
I know. I agree with you. And I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I think it's super relying on journalism, obviously, and reviews and paying attention to that. But you can't pay attention to that stuff every day,
right?
Unless you're a total cinephile, and then awesome, you're actively seeking these films out. But I agree, when we're going to movie theaters, I feel and people who are actively seeing movies, you're browsing, you're looking through the paper, you're looking online or what have you, and you're aware of what's coming out. And that's part of the marketing of the film, right? It's just, hey, here's the film.
Right.
Rather than just getting lost in the bowels of some search engine on fucking line. I don't know. You bring up a really important point. I don't know the answer to that. I think that I bet there's plenty of tools out there. I don't know what they are, though.
I would love to see trailers before Netflix films, because you think about, if we're not going to the movies as much and more movies are being released to streaming, you click on, for instance, All Day and a Night, and the movie just starts. So we're really missing that experience of 10 trailers before a movie. And it took me a while to kind of realize that when you start missing that experience, it's okay, so how do we find out stuff? So I would love to see Netflix and Amazon, when you click on their thing, you have to watch. You can't skip it. 5-10 minutes of trailers, the same way you would in a theater. I would love that, but who knows?
You bring up a great point, because it's like that is exactly what people going to the movies often complain about, is sitting through 20 minutes of ads and trailers. But really, it's like, now that you bring it up in this way, it's so important for those films. And not just obviously in the economics of it all for that film, but just for us as viewers to get to see these films, and for the filmmakers, for you to know what's out there. So I agree. I mean, I don't know. Does Netflix have any sort of trailer platform where is there any just trailers that they play of upcoming stuff at all anywhere?
From my experience, and I try to stay away from Netflix because it just gets overwhelming. I try to, if something's on there, I'll find out first and visit it. But from my experience, it's if you go over a film, the trailer for that film will play, but there's not a Netflix trailers section that I know of. You actually have to go to the film itself and then go to that film's trailer to see it. There's no just here's what's new, here's what's coming. Where it just is giving you that same experience. And same like your Amazons and Apple TV, anywhere you go, doesn't exist right now.
I mean, it's funny because this is ridiculous. I mean, it seems like all these platforms should just have upcoming work, and you get to watch trailers there, at least if it's not trailers before the show. Because the thing is, the person who has their finger on the remote still has the ability to go and scroll to the start of the show, even if there were trailers, right? But at least if there were a place to view trailers on all the platforms, that would make a lot of sense, for sure.
Kind of like when you go to IMDb, all the trailers are there, but you have way more people going on Netflix than IMDb. So obviously right now it's we had COVID and then the social climate. Obviously there's a lot going on, especially here in Savannah, right? We're an hour away from Brunswick where Ahmaud Arbery was killed. The conversations are good and positive. This feels like a movement. What do you see the role of cinema and filmmakers and just the industry? What can people do? As filmmakers, I know we can tell the stories, but at the same time, the stories have been told, for decades. Not nearly as many as we need. But you go back, Do the Right Thing, which feels more relevant than ever, is 30 years old. Is there anything? Is there a responsibility of the film industry to amplify voices right now? And if so, how do we do that?
Yeah. I would say that there's a responsibility for society in general to amplify the voices of folks of color and Black Lives Matter and all that stuff. And even if you're not for or pro Black Lives Matter, you can still, anyone with common sense knows that Black lives matter. It's just I don't know, man.
It seems silly, it's easy to not be, it's easy to say it's easy. It's easy to not be a racist, and it's easy to say racism is bad. I feel like that's a conversation has been difficult in the past for whatever reason. I think it's more and more a conversation that, like you said, it's, even if you're not out chanting Black Lives Matter, you can still be a part of some progression. Yeah. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah. I think that there's, a lot of stuff in the media is like this white silence is violence. I've been seeing that headline. And I would agree. I think that we have to have these discussions with one another for us to advance as a society to, eventually defeat racism and, make this a better world for people of color, for Black, Brown, Asian Americans, everyone. This is, I don't know, enough is enough, man. I think it's everything that's been going on the last few weeks is, the last month, previously a month with Ahmaud Arbery, but I don't know, it's infuriating. And I think that I want to live in a better country than this. That's for damn sure. It's just disappointing. And I think in terms of films, I think I'd like to see I'd like to see more diversity in film in general across the board, you know, and for the stories to be different and all sorts of stories. I mean, the reality is, Black cinema has had an incredible resurgence, you know, since around the time of Moonlight. I don't even know if you call it a resurgence. I don't know what you call it, but I feel like Black cinema has been on fire for the last, you know,
100%.
close to a decade, and there's so much amazing work that's coming out. And it's like, but the reality is, you look at it, everything prior to that, and it's just white films, you know. I mean, I'm granted, obviously there's stuff mixed in there, but the grand scope of what's presented to this country is presented to from white folk to white folk.
Right.
And you know, my lady is Mexican American, and you know, there's such there needs to be more voices in the for the Latino community, the Latinx community, like I said, the Asian American community. And it just shouldn't feel like these are, you know, these are Black films, or these are Mexican films, or these are Mexican American films, or Asian American films. It's like, these are American films, right? And
Right.
like, these stories are something that everyone across the board can relate to and experience. And I feel for, you know, I feel for the kids especially. Like, I just imagine to relate to a lot of this stuff, I either imagine having children of color, which I don't have children, or I imagine being a child of color. And it's like, if you look at what's presented out there, you know, it can be really bleak, and feeling like you relate to what's out there. It's hard. I don't know. I think the way, so yeah, I mean, we need more stories across the board in American cinema, and for sure. And we need more people of color represented in the labor force. We need more women represented in the labor force. I was just talking to some colleagues about this and figuring out ways. I mean, there's a lot of different issues that need resolution, and the union portal of getting labor, getting people into the union is troubling in its format, in terms of trying to diversify it in general. It's hard as hell to get in a union, you know, and I'm certainly not trying to knock the union right now. I mean, I have, you know, received so much from my union and so much support, and I consider it's probably one of the most liberal unions in the country. But, you know, there's still holes, right? There's holes that need filling. You know, yeah. That's the reality. So yeah, I mean, I would love to, I mean, one of the things that I would love figured out is something I find interesting that's come of late, is that there's been all this publication of, here's these Black-owned businesses in Los Angeles, in Savannah, in across the country, and all of a sudden we're starting to see that. I think it'd be good if there was something like that in the labor force for technicians, because as a department head, I'm concerned with having a diverse crew, especially, well, in general. But the reality is, here in Los Angeles, or here in my hometown of backup, you know, I was from the Bay Area, through, you know, it feels like it kind of fell off the truck and got a diverse squad, right? There's people of color, there's women, blah, blah, blah. And part of that is seeking that out. And part of that is just dumb luck. Like, hey, someone referred this person, I ended up with them. They showed up. I didn't know what color their skin was. Their skin's brown, whatever. They're part of the crew. I mean, just like you end up with a diverse body of crew But when you go, for me, when I have to go and travel and work in another city, and now all of a sudden I'm trying to build a diverse crew, that can be incredibly challenging. So I think I'm just curious. One of the things I was kind of spitballing with folks is, maybe there's a crew member that kind of represents the Black technicians in this specific town, in this specific city. So
Right.
if you need labor and you want to build a diverse crew, you have this technician that's kind of got the pulse of the town and can say, hey, here these guys are great. Here these gals are great. You go to Los Angeles, you can contact this technician and they can refer you to people, because it's hard. It's hard. You go to a town and you call someone up and you don't know who's going to show up. It's tricky, man. It's a tricky place to be.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't want to pressure you and you have all the answers, but it's something we're paying attention to, even with Montage, our business, it's, we try to see film as a form of escapism, but we're, as individuals, we're a group of four of us, and we're on our own, being global and doing our part. And we're thinking, as a cinema right now, what can we do? What stories can we try to show and bring to the light if we can, here in Savannah and everywhere. Because it does feel like, when you talk about needing more stories from people, probably more stories from women, Moonlight felt like a big moment, and it was a big moment. It's a huge moment for that film to win Best Picture. It's 2017. It shouldn't have felt as a big of a moment,
Yeah.
as it did. It should not have been as shocking, but it's great that it was. And then even, then you look at last year, you have Greta Gerwig not nominated for Best Director, but she gets the Best Picture nod. There's a lot of work to be done in the industry. We're trying to start something small here in Savannah, so we have a long way before, we can try to do something super impactful, but we're doing what we can right now. So I'm right there with you. And I love hearing that about trying to get the crews, because that's something a lot of people who watch films don't think about. You see director, cinematographer, composer, maybe, some people maybe go that far, cast, and that's where a lot of people stop paying attention. And and I think that'll have a trickle down effect. I'm sure you'd agree. If the more diverse crew that you have, just the more powerful a story can be. The more perspectives, the more hands on deck. I look forward to that, and I hope that's something that can really change.
Yeah, big time.
So I don't want to keep too much of your time. On a little lighter note, during COVID, during your quarantine, kind of like to ask what people have been doing. What have you been watching, and what have you been drinking? So get the Vanna question.
Oh man, what have I been watching? I got the Criterion collection, got the Criterion channel rather, over quarantine. So I've just been watching a whole bunch of everything on the Criterion channel. I'm not going to get too specific because I don't even remember everything I'm watching. Anyways, I'm sorry. That answer is horrible. But as far as what have I been drinking, I've been drinking, basically I drink Modelo and I drink a little mezcal, and that's my cocktail. And those are my poisons.
Really? That's what, so you were the second interview I've done this month. The other one, did you catch Corpus Christi? It was it was a Polish film. It was nominated for best international film at the Oscars this year.
No, I got to check that out.
It's great. So we had the star on 2 weeks ago. He zoomed in from Poland, and I asked him the same question, and his drink was mezcal. So we're 2 for 2 with mezcal being the drink of choice. That's funny. That's actually. I remember when you were here in Savannah, Underberg, which we didn't have at my place. But next time you come, there's a great cocktail bar here called Savoy Society. They're friends of the pod. This wonderful little rye whiskey drink with some Underberg flipped upside down. So if you would love it, it's great.
Oh, awesome! Right on.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm super stoked for everything, man. I'm stoked to see what happens with Underground Railroad. Again, can't wait for that. Anything else that you kind of have? Any of the projects you have coming up, or you kind of want to share with the people?
You know what? I'm available.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't worked. The whole film business has been shut down. I mean, there's a couple oddball commercials that I know about that people have worked on and whatnot. But you know, June 12th, I think, is the day that they've released the whole white paper, which is kind of a guide for getting back to work. And I just coming up on June 12th, I think they're saying is the date that things can start back up. But talking to people, I think it's going to be a while. You know, I think maybe the first, you know, real narrative projects will start maybe in July.
Gotcha.
But no, my phone is not ringing, man. I'm ready for the phone to ring. I think the reality is the rest of 2020 is just going to be unbearably slow. It's a scary time.
It'll be weird next year when there's just a huge drought of content. It's going to be really strange when the effects of right now starts to really hit, where it's like, what the fuck we're going to watch? And it's going to be good to have the Criterion channel or whatever, you know, to go back. Cause I feel like there's going to be, I mean, probably what the first whole half of next year is going to be very dry for content. Yeah,
no, for sure. Without a doubt.
Yeah. But Kiva, I appreciate you talking, man. It's Kiva the Gaffer on Instagram if anyone checks it out. You've been very vocal about what's going on, so I know we appreciate that. You know, our team at Montage, we'll keep up with you. And, you know, when the Underground Railroad comes out, I'd love to chat with you again so we can kind of talk a little more about the project, because I don't know what else I'm looking forward to really for the rest of the year besides the Five Bloods tomorrow. So.
Yeah, buddy. Absolutely.
Nice well, thanks again, man. We'll, you as well when you're in Savannah, man. We'll have that Underberg for you and some mezcal. And,
cheers.
Be good, brother. We'll see you.
Appreciate it.